Ethan Cole was a single dad, raising his 8-year-old son, Liam, in a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of Los Angeles. Life hadn't been kind to him. Once a decorated police officer, he was forced to resign after taking the blame for a superior's corruption scandal. Since then, he worked as a night guard at a downtown parking complex, humble work, but enough to feed his boy and keep a roof over their heads. That Friday night was different. The rain fell hard, the streets empty, and the city lights reflected in small puddles across the concrete. Ethan was making his last round when a black luxury car screeched into the garage, nearly hitting a pillar. Out stepped a man in a tailored suit, breathless and visibly shaken. He looked nothing like a criminal, more like someone from the front page of a business magazine. Behind him, sirens blared in the distance. "Please," the stranger gasped. "You have to hide me." Ethan frowned. "Hide you? From who?" "The police," the man whispered urgently. "I didn't do what they think. Please, you have to trust me." Years of law enforcement instincts told Ethan something wasn't right. But there was also something in the man's eyes, genuine fear, not guilt. Against every rule in the book, Ethan nodded. "This way." He led the man behind the maintenance area and locked the door. Seconds later, police cars roared into the parking lot. Flashlights swept the area as officers questioned Ethan. "Did you see a black Bentley come through here?" one officer asked, rain dripping from his cap. Ethan's pulse raced. He could tell the truth and avoid trouble, or protect the terrified stranger. He made his choice. "No," he said firmly. "No cars came through in the last hour." The officer squinted, clearly suspicious. "You sure about that?" "Positive." After several tense minutes, the police finally drove off, leaving silence behind. Ethan exhaled, his heart pounding. The man stepped out from hiding, gratitude in his eyes. "You didn't have to do that." Ethan shrugged. "You looked like you needed help." "I owe you," the man said. "You don't know what you just did for me." Before Ethan could respond, the man was gone, disappearing into the night like a ghost. When Ethan returned home at dawn, Liam was waiting at the door. "Dad, did you work all night again?" Ethan smiled tiredly. "Yeah, buddy, but it's okay. One more paycheck, and we'll fix the heater." He didn't know that by helping a stranger, his life, and his son's, was about to change forever. Ethan woke up to an unusual rumble that shook the walls of his small rented house. For a brief moment, he thought it was thunder, but the morning sun was shining bright through the window. He rubbed his eyes, stood up, and walked toward the door, still half asleep. When he opened it, his breath caught in his throat. The narrow street outside his home was filled, bumper to bumper, with luxury cars. Rolls-Royces, Bentleys, Ferraris, and black SUVs lined up in a row, gleaming under the California sun. The sound of engines idling filled the quiet neighborhood. Neighbors peeked through curtains and stood on their porches, filming on their phones. Liam ran to his father's side, his toy truck in his hand. "Dad, are those cars for real?" Ethan blinked, utterly confused. I don't know, buddy." Then, from the center of the convoy, a man stepped out of a black Rolls-Royce. The moment Ethan saw him, his heart skipped. It was the same man he had hidden the night before, the stranger who had begged for help. But now, he didn't look terrified or lost. He looked powerful, confident, and surrounded by bodyguards. The man adjusted his cufflinks, smiled warmly, and walked straight toward Ethan. "Good morning, Mr. Cole," he said with a calm, commanding voice. Ethan frowned. You found me." The man chuckled softly. "You made that easy. My people traced the security footage from the parking complex. Look, if you're here about last night, I didn't mean to cause trouble," Ethan said nervously. "I just did what anyone would have done." "Anyone?" The man raised an eyebrow. "No, Ethan, not anyone would risk their job and freedom for a stranger." Ethan swallowed. "You never told me who you were." The man extended his hand. "Alexander Drayton, CEO of Drayton Industries." Ethan froze. He had read about Alexander Drayton, one of America's youngest billionaires, a man known for his bold business moves and secret philanthropy. But seeing him here, in front of his rundown home, felt unreal. "I owe you my life," Drayton said sincerely. "If you hadn't protected me last night, I'd be in handcuffs right now for something I didn't do." Ethan shook his head. "I didn't do it for reward. I just felt it was right." Drayton smiled. "That's exactly why you deserve this." With a nod to his assistant, several men opened the trunks of the luxury cars. The sight left everyone speechless. One car was loaded with toys and gifts. Another carried groceries, furniture, and even new clothes. One man approached Ethan, holding a black velvet box and a set of keys. What is this? Ethan asked. Your new car, Drayden said simply. An Aston Martin Vantage. It's yours. Ethan stepped back. No, I can't take this. It's too much. Drayden placed a hand on his shoulder. Ethan, last night, you didn't ask who I was, or what I was worth. You just helped. That kind of character can't be bought, but it can be rewarded. Tears stung Ethan's eyes. For years, he had struggled to survive, juggling shifts, living paycheck to paycheck, and raising his son alone. And now, standing before him was a billionaire offering him the kind of blessing he could barely comprehend. Drayden handed him an envelope. And this, he said, is your new home. Paid in full. Ethan opened the envelope and gasped. Inside was a property deed, a 2-story house in a suburban neighborhood, with his name printed clearly, Ethan Cole. I don't know what to say, Ethan whispered. Say you'll accept it, Drayden said gently. You and your son deserve better. At that moment, Liam ran up, tugging at Ethan's pant leg. Dad, look, he shouted excitedly. They brought bikes and toys. For me. Ethan turned to Drayden, eyes wide. You didn't have to. I wanted to, Drayden replied. A boy like yours deserves to dream without limits. The billionaire knelt down to Liam's level and smiled. Do you like cars, Liam? Liam's eyes sparkled. Yeah, my dad and I fix old ones sometimes. Drayden's smile widened. Then how about you visit my car collection one day? Maybe I'll let you pick one for a ride. Liam gasped. Really, Drayden said, winking. Reporters had now gathered at the end of the street, cameras rolling. Neighbors whispered in disbelief. A single dad, once fired and forgotten, was now surrounded by hundreds of millions of dollars worth of cars. One journalist called out, Mr. Drayden, can you tell us what's happening here? Drayden turned toward the cameras. This man, he said, gesturing to Ethan, saved me from a wrongful arrest. He didn't ask for anything in return. The world needs to know that there are still honest, decent people left. Today isn't about wealth, it's about gratitude. The crowd clapped. Ethan felt his throat tighten as emotion washed over him. Drayden wasn't finished. He handed Ethan another envelope. Inside is something for your future, and your sons. Ethan opened it. It was a scholarship certificate for Liam, a full education package from elementary school through college, covered entirely by the Drayden Foundation. Ethan blinked back tears. You didn't have to do all this. I did, Drayden said firmly. Because the night you helped me, I realized something. I've spent years surrounded by people who only cared about my money. But you risked everything for a stranger. That kind of heart deserves a second chance at life. Ethan looked at his son, who was now sitting inside one of the cars, pretending to drive. A lump formed in his throat. All I ever wanted was to give him a better life, he said quietly. Drayden smiled. Now you can. He handed Ethan one last document. This is a job offer. Head of Security, Drayden Industries. Full salary, benefits, and a home office if you need flexibility for your son. Ethan stared in disbelief. You're serious? As serious as the night you saved me, Drayden replied. Ethan took the offer with trembling hands. I don't even know how to thank you. Drayden looked around at the cheering neighbors, then back at Ethan. You already did, when you chose integrity over fear. The billionaire extended his hand again. Ethan shook it firmly. For the first time in years, he felt something he hadn't felt since his police days, pride. As the convoy began to leave, one of the reporters approached Ethan for a comment. Sir, what do you plan to do now? Ethan smiled, holding his son close. Live, work hard, and teach my boy that doing the right thing is always worth it, even when no one's watching. Liam looked up. Dad, are we rich now? Ethan laughed softly, tears still in his eyes. No, kiddo, we're just lucky to have met the right person, and to have done the right thing. Drayden climbed back into his Rolls-Royce, giving a final wave. We'll talk soon, Ethan. Enjoy your new life. The convoy of cars slowly rolled away, leaving behind a quiet street, and one man whose world had completely transformed overnight. That night, as Ethan and Liam sat on the floor of their small living room surrounded by unopened gifts, Ethan whispered, You know, Liam, maybe life has a strange way of rewarding kindness. Liam nodded, yawning. Does that mean if we help more people, more cars will come? Ethan laughed. No, buddy, but maybe happiness will. As the boy drifted to sleep on his father's shoulder, Ethan looked out the window. The night was peaceful again, the stars shining bright. For the first time in years, he felt at peace, not because of the wealth, but because his act of courage had reminded him that even in a world full of greed and corruption, goodness still mattered. And though he didn't know it yet, that one night had set in motion something far bigger, a friendship that would later save Drayton Industries from destruction, and a partnership that would make Ethan Cole's name known across the nation as the man who stood by truth when no one else did. The next morning, a letter arrived at Ethan's new house. It was handwritten, from Drayton himself. Greater than, Ethan, I've built my empire on strategy and strength. But last night reminded me that real power lies in honesty and kindness. You protected me, not knowing who I was. You reminded me to be human again. Welcome to the family, Alexander Drayton. Asterisk. Ethan folded the letter and smiled. Life had taken everything from him once, his badge, his job, his peace. But now, it had given him something far greater, a purpose reborn through kindness. As he sipped his coffee and watched Liam play with his new bike outside, Ethan whispered to himself, sometimes, helping a stranger is the best decision you'll ever make. And somewhere across the city, Alexander Drayton looked out of his office window, smiling quietly to himself, knowing that in a dark parking lot one rainy night, he hadn't just found safety, he had found a friend.